The empire had crumbled, and now the man behind the curtain was finally in the spotlight. Bernie Ebbers, once praised as a self-made billionaire and telecom pioneer, now stood before a jury, accused of orchestrating one of the largest corporate frauds in U.S. history. What unfolded in the courtroom wasn't just a legal battle, it was the unraveling of a carefully crafted illusion. Testimonies turned allies into accusers, and evidence exposed the true cost of ambition fueled by deception. But the collapse of WorldCom wasn't just a headline or a trial, it was a catastrophe that shattered lives. Thousands lost their jobs, their savings, their futures. Wall Street reeled, Washington responded, and new laws were born in the ashes. This is the true story of how a titan fell, how trust was betrayed, and how the aftermath reshaped corporate America forever. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, but in tone. The kind of place where reputations unravel and words weigh more than billions. On one side, the U.S. government, ready to prove that Bernie Ebbers was the architect of one of the biggest financial frauds in American history. On the other, Bernie himself, frail, silent, and still insisting he knew nothing. It had been 3 years since the scandal broke. The headlines had faded, the markets had moved on, but for thousands of ex-employees and investors, the pain hadn't. They had been waiting for this moment, for justice, for someone, anyone, to be held accountable. Bernie entered the courtroom like a fallen king. No cameras, no fanfare, just a man in a suit, accused of orchestrating a lie worth over $11 billion. The defense painted him as a visionary, a man who built something from nothing. Yes, mistakes were made, but Bernie, they claimed, was not the one making them. He relied on his accountants, his CFO, the people he trusted. He didn't micromanage. He didn't sign the entries. He didn't even understand the technical side of finance. But the prosecution wasn't interested in Bernie's charm or his claimed ignorance. They had a trail. Emails, memos, meetings, and most damning of all, Scott Sullivan, WorldCom's former chief financial officer, who took the stand and pointed his finger directly at his former boss. Sullivan testified that Bernie didn't just know about the fraud, he demanded it. That when WorldCom's numbers started slipping, Bernie was under pressure from Wall Street to deliver consistent growth. And when reality didn't match expectations, he ordered Sullivan to make it work. The jury listened as Sullivan described how Bernie was obsessed with the stock price, how he micromanaged earnings reports, how he pushed for quarter after quarter of inflated results to keep the illusion alive. And then came the paper trail, phone records, meeting minutes, private notes, even moments where Bernie allegedly suggested layoffs to cover up financial manipulation. Bernie's lawyers pushed back hard. They attacked Sullivan's credibility, called him a liar seeking a lighter sentence. They argued that Bernie was a big-picture guy, more preacher than profiteer, that he didn't understand accounting rules, that he was as shocked as anyone. But it was too late. The damage had been done. By now, the jury had seen enough. The image of Bernie Ebbers as a humble, down-home business hero had faded, replaced by a picture of power, pressure, and profit at any cost. On March 15, 2005, the verdict came down. Guilty on all counts. Bernie Ebbers was convicted of conspiracy, securities fraud, and making false filings with regulators. The sentence? 25 years in federal prison. One of the harshest punishments ever handed down for corporate fraud at the time. Outside the courthouse, there were mixed reactions. Some saw justice. Others saw a scapegoat. But no one could deny what the verdict symbolized. The message was loud and clear. Corporate power is not untouchable. CEOs are not immune. And when the truth comes out, even billion-dollar cowboys fall. WorldCom's bankruptcy didn't just destroy one man, it exposed the cracks in America's entire financial system. Still in this episode, we follow the aftershocks, reforms, lost lives, and the true cost of unchecked ambition. When the gavel came down and Bernie Ebbers was declared guilty, the cameras focused on him. But the real story, the lasting story, wasn't just about one man in handcuffs. It was about the thousands of lives left behind in the crater where WorldCom once stood. In July 2002, WorldCom filed for bankruptcy. The numbers were staggering. Over $107 billion in assets, nearly 20,000 employees, and millions of investors, gone in a puff of smoke and cooked numbers. For Wall Street, it was a moment of reckoning. The second largest bankruptcy in U.S. history at the time, only Enron had burned brighter and crashed harder. But WorldCom was different. It was supposed to be safe. A telecom giant. A pillar of the digital age. And yet, under the polished reports and stock projections was a lie so big, it took years to see it all. Employees were the first to suffer. People who had invested their lives, and often their retirement savings, into the company were suddenly out of work and out of luck. 401k accounts, once fat with WorldCom stock, evaporated. Stock once worth $60 a share sank below $1. Families were ruined. Dreams deferred. Careers ended overnight. Investors, especially small ones, had trusted the system. They trusted the auditors, the regulators, the headlines. But in the end, the system had failed them too. It wasn't just a company that collapsed. It was trust. The shockwaves reached Washington. Senators demanded answers. Regulators scrambled to regain credibility. And in the wake of both Enron and WorldCom, new legislation was born. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. It changed everything. From stricter financial disclosures, to criminal penalties for executives who lied, to the creation of an oversight board for auditors, Sarbanes-Oxley became the line in the sand. A promise, however imperfect, that corporate fraud would not go unchecked again. But reforms came too late for many. Some employees lost homes. Some lost their marriages. Some lost the will to begin again. The damage wasn't just financial, it was emotional, spiritual, existential. And Bernie, he filed appeals. He maintained his innocence. He said he was misunderstood, a visionary, not a villain. But the truth had already spoken. The spreadsheets had told the story, and the jury had believed it. WorldCom's brand disappeared, absorbed by Verizon after a messy restructuring. But the name, WorldCom, remained a cautionary tale, a case study in business schools, a warning in boardrooms. Because WorldCom wasn't just a scandal. It was a symbol of how far ambition can go when no one dares to say no. The empire had crumbled, and now the man behind the curtain was finally in the spotlight. Bernie Ebbers, once praised as a self-made billionaire and telecom pioneer, now stood before a jury, accused of orchestrating one of the largest corporate frauds in U.S. history. What unfolded in the courtroom wasn't just a legal battle, it was the unraveling of a carefully crafted illusion. Testimonies turned allies into accusers, and evidence exposed the true cost of ambition fueled by deception. But the collapse of WorldCom wasn't just a headline or a trial, it was a catastrophe that shattered lives. Thousands lost their jobs, their savings, their futures. Wall Street reeled, Washington responded, and new laws were born in the ashes. This is the true story of how a titan fell, how trust was betrayed, and how the aftermath reshaped corporate America forever. The courtroom may have closed, but the consequences still echo through boardrooms, bank accounts, and broken dreams. Bernie Ebbers' story isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a mirror to unchecked ambition, a warning carved into corporate history. If this chapter pulled you in, if the fall of WorldCom opened your eyes, then help this story reach others. Give this video a thumbs up to support true financial storytelling. Share it with anyone who still believes corporate fraud is victimless. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next unraveling of greed, deception, and downfall. And drop a comment below. Was Bernie Ebbers a brilliant entrepreneur who lost control, or the puppet master all along? The story's not done. The next revelation is just one click away.